Barakatah Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Racha Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is A Few Words on the Calendar and Other Topics. This has been the spirit out there, that we've been going over the calendar, the new moons, the Sabbaths, and things of that nature. And I was just watching earlier. I was watching Elder Apostle Gabar's video that he did based off of a video that the Elder Monaghan did from the DC camp. And I just ran across some articles, or an article. Wanted to touch on that, say a few words on that, whatever the Spirit allows to come out. There was a post also that a brother put up that I would like to touch on. And if the Spirit allows, one more thing, that we'll get to, and we'll see where the Spirit leads us. Lord's will, it'll be an edifying lesson. So what I have here is I put this in the description box. It says, did you know? It says history of the calendar. It says in September 1752, the Julian calendar was replaced with the Gregorian calendar in Great Britain and its American colonies. The Julian calendar was 11 days behind the Gregorian calendar. So 14 September got to follow 2nd September on the day of the change. So you see, so they changed days because you had 11 extra days in the Julian calendar. So they removed 11 days. So it is impossible for you to tell us that you can keep the Passover, I'm sorry, not the Passover, the Sabbath, Friday night to Saturday night, and that goes all the way back to the beginning when the Lord established the Sabbath. It's impossible because there were days added, days taken away. There were whole weeks, in certain cases, almost 2 weeks taken out of the calendar. So it's impossible to trace Friday to Saturday night all the way back to being a day that we celebrated or kept the Passover. So there was another point, but it escaped me for the moment. All right, so the only plausible, calculation, which is biblical, is the new moon, which was set up for that very purpose, to keep time. As we read, let's get a quick precept and then we'll continue reading. Let's go to Genesis. And everything is in the scriptures, but you always have individuals that want to go above and beyond, to keep something that is not biblical. Genesis 1:14, and the power said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, because there was already dark night and there was already day. But the Lord created these lights in the heavens for the circuit of years and days, the circuit of months, the circuit of weeks, so on and so forth. As we read in Wisdom of Solomon, the 7th chapter, we'll go back to Genesis. Wisdom of Solomon 7 and 17. For he hath given me certain knowledge of things that are, namely to know how the world was made, and the operation of the elements, because that's when you go back to Genesis, the 1st chapter, you understand that those waters were elements. You have the element chart, forget exactly what it's called, and that's what everything was created of, those different elements that you see in the atmosphere being fused together to create certain things. It says the beginning, ending, and midst of time. So the Lord showed King Solomon the beginning of time, the ending of time, and everything in between. So he saw everything that the world has experienced from the beginning. He's seen everything. The alterations of the turning of the sun, because the sun, contrary to popular belief, revolves around the earth. The earth, periodic table, the water of elements, the water, elder. The sun revolves around the earth. contrary to popular belief, because you have these people that follow a I forget what it's called, but the geocentric is everything revolving around the earth, and the earth was created and everything else was created after, because even when we go back to Genesis, the earth was created here in the 9th verse, and the power said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. And the powers called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And the power saw that it was good. Right? So if the earth was created here, right? This was the beginning of the 3rd day, right? And in the ending of the 3rd day, you had the earth, the seas, the fruits, trees, and everything. Then in the 4th day was when the sun and the moon and the stars and the constellations of the heaven were created. How can the earth revolve around the sun when the earth was created before the sun? If that makes any sense. I know you have geocentric, which is the earth being the center, and then there's another one with the sun. I forget exactly what it's called. Offhand right now, it's not coming to me the name of it. So you had the geocentric and whatever the other one is. So how can the earth revolve around the sun when the earth was created before the sun? Anyways, going back, it says the beginning, ending, and midst of times, the alterations of the turning of the sun, and the change of seasons, the circuits of years, and the position of stars. So pretty much the Lord gave King Solomon the knowledge of all of these things, how to keep the calendar. There was no calendars where, you would get a calendar every year. The priests or different individuals would not solar system. They would gather. Come and get your Hebrew calendars. Come and get your Hebrew calendars. No, it was nothing like that. Everything was done by the alteration of the moon. And no, it's okay, brother. You tried. There you go. This is it right here, bro. Geocentric and heliocentric, the water, because helios, that's sun. I just forgot the term, term for sun. So geocentric and heliocentric. The people that teach heliocentric doctrine, or that the sun, or that the earth revolves around the sun, is because they are sun worshippers. It's geocentric. And geo meaning earth, centric means center. So the earth is the center of the universe because that's what was created first. Okay? So I'm looking for this here because you didn't have anything remotely that resembled the calendar like back then that you would hang up on your wall, in your house, or before there were houses in your tent. When we go to 2 Chronicles, I believe it is. I think it's 2 Chronicles. It could be 1 Chronicles. Just bear with me 1 second. Right. 1 Chronicles 12:32. And of the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times. See? They had the understanding of the times. Why? Because they were given that from their forefathers. That's why you had something called the so-called Mayan calendar, or the Mayan calendar as they call it. Because they were able to look at the stars and be able to read and know when what is happening. And they said that the year 2000 was the end of the world, but what it was the shift. It was a shift from one world order to the next. So the year 2000 set everything for these devils' plans into motion, and they're about to go down, so there's a whole history on that. So it says, and the children of Issachar, which were men that had understanding of the times to know what Israel ought to do, the heads of them were 200, and all their brethren were at their commandment. Right. So the children of Issachar, they were the star watchers, so to speak. And that's how we would get the calendars. You know, this is why King David, when he was just David, you know, during the time of the new moon, he didn't sit with the king. It said that the next day was the second day. Why? Because the moon is what starts the cycle for the weeks and for the months and for the years. And there's also a setup on when the year begins, so on and so forth. There's a whole dynamic that goes along with it. So going back, so the King Solomon had the circuit of years and the position of stars. So going back to Genesis 1 and 14, and the power said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And it said what? And the evening and the morning were the first day. So the day begins in the evening. When you read all throughout Genesis, the first chapter, the day begins in the evening. And the evening and the morning were the first day. So you have this, the moon comes up. Once the moon comes up, that is the ending of that day, or actually the beginning of the day, you know, of the next day. Then the sun comes up, and then it starts to, you know, go down, because the sun has its cycle or its circuit. The sun is not positioned there without moving. The only thing that's positioned in place is the earth, because everything else revolves around the earth. The earth was created first before all of these different planets and sun and the moon and the stars and the quasars and whatever you want to call them. All right. All right. So let's go from there. Let's read on. It says, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven, which is the ozone layer, to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And the powers made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, which is what? The sun, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. So how can the sun be the center of the universe when the earth was created before it? And then there's a scripture in it's either first Ezra or second Ezra. Let me try first Ezra 4. Yep, this is it. Wow, it went right to it. 34. First Ezra 4:34. Barakateh Halba Shemel Shai. O ye men, are not women strong? Great is the earth, high is the heaven, swift is the sun in his course. So if the sun was the center of the universe, why is it moving? Why is it moving? Why does it have a course? The earth is the one that's stable. Swift is the sun in his course, for he compasseth the heavens round about, and fetcheth his course again to his own place in one day. That's why you see the sun coming up. You see it at dawn. You see it, in midday, and then you see it start to go down, because it's going through a cycle that it does every day. All right, and even when you don't see the sun is there. All right, so that's that. It says, and the power set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And the power saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the fourth day, or the 4,000th year. And how can the earth, once again, how can the sun be the center of the universe if the earth was created first? That's when they grow on. So going back to this calendar, the Julian calendar, which was changed from in 1752 to the Gregorian calendar, they removed, it was 7 days behind. So they added, right? The Julian calendar was 11 days behind the Gregorian calendar. So September 14th got to follow September 2nd. So in other words, when September, I'm trying to understand this because the way they got it written. So September 14 got to follow September 2nd, right? So they jump from September 2nd, which they should have wrote it the other way. They jumped from September 2nd, this particular year, 1752, to September 14th. So they hopped a whole 11 days in the calendar. So how can you follow that calendar and every day you're saying that you kept, because you had this is an argument out there that the Sabbath is Friday night to Saturday night because that goes all the way back, it's never been broken, blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you explain stuff like this? The additions, and then you have the leap years and all of that, right? It says on the day of the change, the result was that between 3 and 13 September, absolutely nothing happened. Why? Because these days were taken out on September 1752. And I'm pretty sure if you go back in history and probably type, somebody, this might be a job for the brother up and coming elder Gabar Yahawada. Type in, September 3rd, 1752 in history, or September 5th, one of these days between here, and see what comes up. That'd be like a fun fact, to check. It says the calendar switch also influenced the way George Washington's birthday is celebrated. He was born on 11 February 1731, but the anniversary of his birth is on 22nd February because of the 11 days eliminated from the calendar switch, you see? So there were 11 days taken out. So how can you say that you follow the Sabbath Friday to Saturday when you don't know when Friday or Saturday really is? It says at the same time, New Year's Day was changed from what? 25th of March to January 1st. Thus, according to the new calendar, Washington was born in 1732. So pretty much, let's deal with this. Because the calendar was kept, the beginning of the year started in end of March, which is around the time of what they call the vernal equinox, or the beginning of spring, which is the beginning of the year when things start to grow. And that's scriptural. Exodus 12:1, and the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. So why did the Lord say that to Moses? Because obviously they were following the Egyptian calendar in Egypt, which wasn't following the same pattern of the moon, or wasn't following the same pattern that the Heavenly Father is setting up right now. So the Lord said, this month right here will be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. He made it crystal clear. Now there's a couple of precepts here, right? I do like this. They put this is like having a Bible with precepts in it, somewhat. Is it this one? Nope. This was Numbers 9:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, in the first month of the second year after they were come out of the land of Egypt. Okay. Deuteronomy 16. Here we go. Deuteronomy 16:1. Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy power. For in the month of Abib, the Lord thy power brought thee forth out of Egypt by night. And this is around the time we keep the Passover, which is around the springtime. All right. When we look up this word Abib, goes back to the Hebrew word abayab, from an unused root meaning to be tender, right? Because this is when stuff starts to grow. Life starts to sprout. Spring, vernal equinox, spring, things start to sprout. And it makes sense that life would begin there and not in the dead of winter, when everything is dead. The winters are the hardest seasons, or the winter is the hardest season to get through. Nothing grows. If you don't have a certain surplus of substance, people catch hell during the winter time. It says, fresh young barley ears, barley, month of ear forming, of green of crop, of growing green Abib, month of Exodus, and Passover, March or April. Right, it depends on the moon, the new moon. All right. So pretty much, you get the idea. So the Passover, which is the 14th day of the first month, that is the middle of the month of the first month. That's the middle of the first month, which would be a full moon. All right, because the middle of the month is when the moon is full, is brightest. The beginning of the month, which is the new moon, is when the moon is very dim. You could only see like a little sliver of it. And that's why you had Issachar, which would be the ones that would watch for the new moons, so that we knew when to keep the feast days, the high holy days, the Sabbaths, so on and so forth. So you didn't have a calendar that you could go, to you couldn't go to the Gulf of Aqaba 7-Eleven back in the days and purchase a calendar for that year so that you can keep track of time. You had watchers, and even among Israel, you had different watches. You had 4 watches in the evening, which I believe they were 3 hours long. All right. So that's established. We got the month of Bib, the first of the month. So now New Year's Day was changed from 25th of March to January 1st. Now this is very interesting because right now people were celebrating the beginning of the year. New Year's Eve or New Year's Day, so on and so forth. People are festive and happy and partying. And this was something that I read earlier. Right, this is something that I read earlier, but also the priest Zakar from the New York camp sent it to me. No, not that either. Right here, boom. This is the brother Rawai La Yasha'Allah Yahushua is coming back, 144K. Now this is centered around New Year's. All right. It says, why the enslaved blacks, which are Israelites, Jews, the real Jews, name New Year's Day as Heartbreak Day. See, today Jake is celebrating, jumping up and down, doing backflips, getting drunk, having a good time. But they don't understand that when this day would come around every year, this was a heartbreaking day. This is when they would separate the families. But here it is. You forgot all about that, and you celebrating festivities that at one time were very detrimental to us. So when we read this, it says, those who believe the lie that the shopping day, Black Friday, or the song Jingle Bells had something to do with slavery should really take heed to what New Year's Day meant to our enslaved ancestors. For many people all over the world, January 1st represents a new beginning and a period of renewed vigor to face the new year. Right, that's why you have your New Year's resolutions, so on and so forth. I'm going to do this. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to start going to the gym. I'm going to cut back on this. I'm going to cut back on that. However, for the enslaved blacks, which are Israelites, laboring on various plantations, farms years before the Civil War, the new year was a period of great anxiety. So they weren't festive at that time. Esau was festive. They were having a good time, but Jake was not. They were very anxious, hoping that day would pass by because they knew that that day would be that particular day would be the day that their families could be separated, as they were either hired out to a new master or sold outrightly. The transfer was particularly depressing for the man or woman being transferred, since that will be the last time sons, daughters, or even love partners are seeing each other. And this brought to mind, Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, which that devil vocab alone says that this doesn't apply to us, which them small heads, they never went through no shit like this. Shit burns you, but hey, the devil got to be the devil. The devil does what the devil does. He will do what he does. So this is Deuteronomy 28 and 32. Thy sons and thy daughters shall be given unto another people, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long, and there shall be no might in thine hand. Nothing you could do about it. So this was a very anxious time because they were hoping that the day would hurry up and go by so that if that day went by and they weren't sold, then there was another year that they had to be with their family. And every time this day would approach, it would be hardship. Now when this day approaches, people start early. You know, they start celebrating. They call it the so-called 12 days of Christmas and all this other bullshit, and then New Year's. It says, according to African-American abolitionist and journalist William Cooper Nell, enslaved people spent New Year's Eve waiting, wondering if their owners were going to rent them out to someone else, thus potentially splitting up their families. The renting out of slave labor was a relatively common practice in the antebellum South and a profitable practice for white slave owners. Some enslaved people were put up for auction that day or held under contracts that started in January. These transactions also took place all year long, and contracts could last for different amounts of time. These deals were conducted privately among families, friends, and business contracts, and slaves were handed over in town squares or courthouse steps, and sometimes simply on the side of the road. Enslaved people who attempted to resist going to their new masters were whipped and thrown in jail until they repented and promised not to run away during the new managed arrangement. So you see this bullshit? Here it is, they doing you wrong, but then they'll beat your ass if you don't want to comply, and then throw you in jail until you repent. Oh, I see the error in my way. Yes, separate me and my family and my woman and my children. Send me off, and then she'll be with another man committing adultery. Who knows where his children will be? These devils got a lot to pay for, but yet still in all, this devil vocab, that goddamn devil, will tell you that this is not talking about going into captivity. Revelation 13:10, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. This is what we're waiting for. And let's just say, hypothetically, that it's not talking about that. All right, let's say it's not talking about that, which it is. But let's play the devil's game. Let's go to Jeremiah 13:16. Therefore, all they that devour thee shall be devoured. Is that not a form of devouring? Putting somebody in slavery, having them get with a woman, building a bond, a relationship between her, having children that brings them closer together, and then splitting them up, and they never see each other again? That's not devouring? It says, and all thine adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity, meaning they're going to go into slavery. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It says, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. And that's scripture. All right, there's no getting around it. And there's many, 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 many more. That's just one of many. All right. So I found that interesting that New Year's Day was changed from 25th of March to January 1st. And that was the day when the slaves were the most, depressed. But today, Jake is all partying. Right? It says, thus, according to the new calendar, Washington was born in 1732. There go that devil right there. It says the first Roman calendar, introduced in 535 BC, had 10 months, with 304 days in a year that began in March. January and February were added only later in 46 BC. Julius Caesar created the year of confusion, right? When the calendar was first set up, this was a year of confusion, which I believe that was 46 BC. By adding 80 days to the year, making it 445 day long to bring the calendar back in step with the season. So that 46 BC was the year of confusion, 445 days long. But now Pope Gregory, he deleted 11 days. So you see how in the hell can you say that you can keep the Sabbath Friday night to Saturday night, and that goes all the way back uninterrupted when there were all these different changes going on? And at one time, the Roman calendar had 8 days. The Egyptian calendar had 10 days. This is why the Lord told Moses, that look, this day shall be the beginning of the month for you, in Exodus the 12th chapter, which was during the time of the Passover, which is during the time of the spring. So it goes on to say the solar year with the value of 365 days and 6 hours was made the basis of the calendar to take care of the 6 hours. Every fourth year was made a 360-day year, which is a leap year. It says, it was then that Caesar decreed that the year begins with the 1st of January. So this goes back to Caesar. They made January 1st, the beginning of the year. Then in America, they did it, or actually during, in America, in 1731, I believe it was. They changed it from March 25th to January 1st. All right. It says in 325 AD, Constantine the Great, the first Christian Roman emperor, introduced Sunday as a holy day in a new 7-day work week. I'm sorry, in a new 7-day week. He also introduced movable Easter and immovable feast Christmas. Right, because he was a pagan. And all he was doing was just adding or incorporating his pagan beliefs with the Christian doctrine to get more followers. Salaki for 1 minute. I'm gonna get this precept here. Salakia, brothers. I haven't really been paying attention to the comment board. Isaiah 24:5. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore has the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned up, and are burnt, and few men left. Now, before we read on, let's go to Psalms chapter 82 and 5. It says, they know not, neither will they understand. They walk on in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are out of course. So everything is off kilter. Why? Because the devil is in power. He's the one in rulership. Let's go real quick before we look up that word. Let's go to, I believe that's Habakkuk 1. Yep, and 4. Therefore the law is slacked, and judgment doth never go forth. For the wicked doth compass about the righteous, therefore wrong judgment proceedeth. And not only wrong judgment, just wrong everything. Because this devil has everything upside down. That's what the scriptures say. Surely your turning of things upside down shall be esteemed as a potter's clay. So now let's look up this word, out of course. The foundations of the earth are out of course. That's why everything is all messed up. The word there is mawat. To totter, shake, slip, right. So when something is tottering and shaking, meaning it's not stable, it's movable. It says to totter, shake, slip, to be shaken, be moved, be overthrown, to dislodge, right. When something is dislodged, meaning it's not stable, there's no stability to it. To be greatly shaken. So everything is out of course. So you can't, we use the calendar, Esau's calendar, because this is the time we're living in, but we don't go according to what his calendar says. We go according to the new moons. That's the cycles we follow. We just happen to use it because everybody is acclimated, which is a fancy word, to keeping the Julian/Gregorian calendar. But we tell you this is why sometimes it might appear that there are 2 new moons in 1 month, because Esau's months, some of them are 31 days, which is way too long. Each day is about 29.53 days. Just a little more than 2.5, just a little more than 29.5 days, which works perfectly in a cycle. Cause from one new moon to the next is about 29.5, 29, around there. You have your 4 weeks, which is your 28 days, and then you have your transition day, and then the whole cycle starts over again. The moon is refreshed, renewed, and boom, it starts all over again. So what else we got? All right, so we read that and that. So let's go back here. Let's see what else we got. In 1545, the Council of Trent, what y'all know about the Council of Trent? Inside joke. Authorized Pope Paul III to reform the calendar once more, advised by astronomer Father Christopher Clavius and physician Aloysius Lilius. Pope Gregory XIII ordered that Thursday, the 4th, October 1582, was to be the last day of the Julian calendar. So the calendar we're keeping today, the very last day for it was October 4th, 1582. Was to be the last day of the Julian calendar. The next day was Friday, October 15th. See? So this was another skip. So 4th, they added another 11 days? For long-term accuracy, every 4th year was made a leap year unless it's a century years like 1700 or 1800. Century years can be leap years only when they are divisible by 400, like 1600, because that's 4 times 3. No, 4 times 4 makes 16. 4 times 4 makes 16. This rule eliminates 3 leap years in 4 centuries, making the calendar sufficiently correct for all ordinary purposes. So there's a lot of changes. So how can you follow that calendar to keep your high holy days, without first going to the standard of measuring time, which is the new moon? And that's why it says that in the book of Ecclesiasticus, in the Apocrypha. Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and around verse 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times. See? Declaration of times. Times for signs, seasons, days, and years. And a sign of the world, right? Because there was, you have your lunar eclipses, so on and so forth. It says, from the moon is a sign of feast, right? The sign of feast is in the middle of the month, which would be the new moon. I'm sorry, which you mean to be the full moon. So that was a slip of the tongue. The middle of the month is the full moon. That's when the moon is the brightest. A light that decreases in her perfection, right? Because in the middle of a month, the moon is full. That's perfection. Then it starts to decrease. Why? Because it's making way for the renewing of itself, which is the next month. And that's how we know when one month ends and the other month begins. It says the month is called after her name, right? Moon, month, same thing. You look up the word new moon in the scriptures, it goes back to the Hebrew word chadash, which means the renewing. And you look up the word month, the English word month in the scriptures, it goes back to the word chadash, which goes back to the word new moon, because the month is named after the moon. Increasing wonderfully, right? Because once it starts, right, the new cycle, it's dim, very dim. Then it starts to increase her light. So the increasing wonderfully and her changing, right? Because the moon goes through its phases, because it's the one that keeps time. Why doesn't the sun go through changes? Okay, well, why is the sun so dim today, but then certain days it's super bright? No, the moon does that because the moon is the setter forth of time. All right, and there's a reason the Lord set it up like that. That way, it would be easy for us to follow time. Increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. All right. You could read the rest of this if you want. It speaks about time standards. The 24-hour division of the day was introduced in the 4th century BC by the Sumero-Babylonians. All right. You have here the Sumerian calendar. The Sumerian calendar was the earliest, followed by the Egyptian, Assyrian, and Elamite calendars. All right. So these are some of your ancient calendars and where the whole calculation of these things came from. But the calculation is based off of the moon. When the moon comes up, beginning of the day, then the next day the sun comes up and the moon starts coming up, that's the next day. All right. And the one last thing I wanted just to say real quick, I watched this movie Wakanda Forever yesterday. It wasn't the greatest copy, but what I did like about the movie, I see why some women said they didn't like it, because they kind of made the men look bad, look like bumbling idiots, and made the woman look powerful and strong, But what I did like about it is the fact that they brought the two kingdoms together, the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom. And, for those of you that haven't seen it, it's going to be kind of a spoiler alert, so you might want to exit stage right on this one. But what I like about it was, I forget it was Tiklo. I forget the name, but it's Tiklon, something like that. Teko, the Northern Kingdom. They had a name where they, came from, and pretty much they knew that they were in jeopardy, so to speak, of Esau coming to destroy them, and they got with the so-called Wakandans, which is a Southern Kingdom, and he came to the queen to let her know, look, we should come together because you have more vibranium, because they had vibranium, but they had a lot more. The Southern Kingdom had a lot more. So what I looked at the vibranium as is not just a precious stone, but I looked at it as grace, the grace given to us by Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. And the Northern Kingdom didn't have enough, but the Southern Kingdom had plenty of it, but they didn't want to share, because he was telling them, look, man, we should just get together and take these devils out, pretty much in so many words. But they wasn't with it, because that whole Sambo spirit that a lot of the Southern Kingdom, Northern Kingdom too, have. So I thought that was kind of heavy. I mean, one part towards the end of the movie, I was kind of sad, to see them fighting against each other and killing each other, but then eventually everything worked out, so to speak. So I just wanted to say that, there was other points, but I can't really remember right now. But the Lord is bringing the tribes back together. It's no coincidence that out of all of the people they could have used, they used in the Southern Kingdom and the Northern Kingdom. These devils know. In the movie, what is that? The Purge. They bringing the tribes together. So-called Negroes, so-called Latinos, Native American Indians, because they know we're all the same people. And the Lord is doing this to stir up those Israelites out there from these different tribes to come back together, because the Lord is sifting the house of Israel and he's building up the breaches. We'll leave you with that in the book of Amos, chapter 9 and verse 11. It says, in that day will I raise up the tabernacle of David that is fallen, and close up the breaches thereof. Right. And you're going to have the tribes coming back together. And that's what's happening right now. So the Lord is causing certain little things happening to stir everything up, to bring the tribes back together. The ones that are part of it are going to come. Part of the elect are going to come. The rest are not. All right. It says, and I will raise up his ruins and I will build it as in the days of old. And we're going right now through the rebuilding of the nation. All right. So, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's pretty good flick. I mean, I'll watch it again. Like I said, there was more that came to mind as I was watching it, but I can't recall it right now, So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say Shalom. Right. His name was Kulkul Khan. Right. That was the individual right here. The brother said Namor. That's this guy right here. The elder, the young elder from New York. His name Namor. Kulkul Khan, name of Yahushua. Right. That's right. All right, so with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. To the next time I say Shalom.